Hello, welcome back to Delphi Live. I'm Roy, and Daisy's joining me today because Val had other things to do. We're going to be talking about embossed lead today. Daisy and I make Daisy play around with lead, and so her and I are going to talk about these really, I think they're really pretty cool looking embossed leads that we've been getting in. I guess we do have to talk about, just real quickly, I guess, the fact that we're working with lead, right? I mean, so the safety aspect, if you're not familiar with working with lead, it's really just a handling issue. Our skin is too tough to absorb lead, so we're not getting lead that way. We are not breathing in lead fumes. The soldering irons don't get hot enough to turn lead into a vapor. It really is more of a ingesting it, right, or absorbing through mucous membranes, so inside your nose, inside your eye. I mean, I always tell people don't pick your nose when you're doing lead work, right? That's probably good advice. Don't eat, I mean, I think some of this seems real obvious, right? I mean, don't eat a sandwich and then, cut a bunch of lead and then eat a sandwich, right? I mean, you're going to contaminate the sandwich. It's if you can remember to wash your hands when you're done, and you'll probably want to wash your hands anyways, because they'll get pretty dirty just from handling the lead, right? So you just need to wash that off, and you should be totally fine. So we're not actually going to show like all the actual construction of lead came. I think we've done that part before about cement and putty. We can talk about it if you like, or if you have questions, you can certainly ask. But we really wanted to do more about just how to. This is a pretty unique material, and we think it's pretty cool looking, and we just want to make sure people felt comfortable working with it, because it is a little, it's a lot different than just working with regular lead, to be honest. Would you agree?
Yeah.
They're wide, right? They're like ½ inch wide kind of stuff, 3/4 inch wide or something. This one's supposed to look kind of like a tree bark, which is what we're kind of doing in a panel here. We're going to show you a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about a bit like how to handle it, right? I mean, this one just came out of the box, and then we, dragged it up here so we could talk about it. And we've noticed that a lot of it, I think, is just because of the width. They do get a little twisted, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. This one's kind of cool, right? This is the hammered one, right? So it's a little subtle, sort of pebbly, sort of textured. So what's kind of interesting about embossed leads is that if you look at some old windows, I'm talking like 100-year-old windows, sometimes you'll see this technique. So really kind of popular more in Victorian style designs or the Victorian era. And so it's kind of cool that this place in Chicago is bringing these embossed leads kind of back. But there's a third one. Let me show you that one real quick. It's
Sea salt.
Sea salt, all right. But a little more aggressive patterning, I think, than the hammered was, which is what you used in your panel, right, Daisy?
Yeah.
In a moment here, we're going to show you actually how we cut it, or a couple of different ways that it can be cut. Traditionally, if you're familiar with lead, it is cut on not on the face, but on the channel. So you would turn the lead this way, right, and use something like lead nippers, lead cutters. So what I have here, if you're not familiar with the technique, so these are flat on one side and then kind of beveled on the other. So the side you want to stay nice and clean, you use the flat side on, but you would come through the channel, which you can see is impossible to do with these because of it's too wide, right? And even if you could, you crush it like pretty good.
Yeah.
So the recommendation on these cames then is to cut them on what's called the face of the came, which is this part here, right? So there is a little piece in the middle. Now you can see the end of that. Can you see? So there's a face right on the top and the bottom. That little middle piece that's holding them together is called the heart. And so that's the part that sometimes we run into when the came's this big. I've smashed that a couple of times when I was trying to cut it. Another way of cutting traditional lead is using something called a lead knife. And then so what you would do is cut, and there you would cut the face of it. Easiest way to do it is just kind of rock it back and forth. I can do it real quick. Let me just cut this little end, just so you guys can see what happens when you cut it like in a traditional manner. You now look at the end of that. You can see what I just did to the end, right? So as Daisy was pointing out, I've just really smashed that end, which does make it a challenge to get your glass into. Now, we can use, the normal thing we would do to widen channels is using a tool called a FID. It's got two different ends in it. I was, talking with Daisy about it earlier, and I was telling her I actually like this flat end to kind of slide in, and then you can open up the lead a little bit, that flange of the lead a little bit better. So this often happens. So don't be surprised now if you are ordering from Delphi. We ship this. If you're not familiar with how we ship our lead came, it comes in the cames are 6 feet long, and we ship them in a 6-foot box, right? Well, a hair over 6 feet, right? So so they're straight, and then the other thing we do is we put a piece of wood on the outside of the box, or sometimes in the box, depending on how many pieces of cane you buy, so that FedEx can't just bend the box in half or something, right? So they ship really well for the most part. It's just like I was talking about, it's just getting it out of the box and getting it into your studio is sometimes the trickiest part, and sometimes this happens. Usually, when we're working with this, it does help just to cut it into smaller sizes that you're working with to handle. It also doesn't stretch as much, but you can see I'm really just bending this carefully, trying to bend it and to get it back until at least so that the face is relatively smooth. I know it's kind of wiggly, but that's okay. We can always take that out as we're working. But just by gently kind of moving it around, you can see I've taken that kind of corkscrew out of it, and at least all of these are relatively flat. Then as I mentioned before on these canes, since they're so wide, it's the flange that's really wide, not the heart. The heart is pretty narrow. It's probably like a 1/16 of an inch, wouldn't you guess, right?
Yeah.
On that, so real narrow. It's the flange coming off from the face, right? That's pretty wide, and then that does get wrinkled, and you can just smooth it out. Like I'm using the FID to do that. I don't know if you can see this piece that I've been playing around with. It's got it wrinkled pretty good, so I just come in with the FID on a nice smooth surface, and I just kind of work it this way.
So I just take 2 pieces of scrap glass. I just have some clear pieces here. I just put them in the channel so that there's something to kind of support that flange that wants to get, pinched. So you want to be careful not to press too hard, or else you'll break the glass like I did earlier today. But it's fine. So then we take our lead knife. So my glass is in my channel there, and we can take our lead knife, and I'm just trying to cut through the first face, just all the way through, and then I can take my glass out. So you can see it's kind of started there. It's a lot easier to, look at it way up close, but it's cut through enough that I know I'm not going to press down on the face there. So then I can take my lead knife again and just rock back and forth to get through the heart and that bottom flange there. So it does pinch just a little bit, but you can take your FID and kind of open that back up.
Yeah, this one didn't pinch that much on the other side,
Yeah.
I noticed, right?
So just the nature of how thick this is, the heart is gonna kind of, bend a little bit, but not quite as much as if I hadn't put that glass in there. So it's a little bit easier to work with, and you're not trying to sit there and fix your lead and straighten it quite as much. So.
And I'm going to show you, I cut it using the lead nippers. So I want to show you how that's done, because it's very similar though. I think you had told me about thinking that having some glass in here to support it would be helpful. So that's how I was doing it too. All right, so just getting some glass, putting it in there. And then the difference that I did was, so I'm leaving the part that I want to cut off outside the glass, right? So what Daisy was doing was cutting where there was still glass, right? But I'm doing that part on the outside. And I would just come in with lead nippers and cutting, again, here, the face of the cane. The only tricky part is sometimes you got to get them kind of wide. And then I would just cut it. So we have a couple of tiny pieces of zinc. And again, if you're not familiar with the zinc, let me show it to you real quick. So if you can see the end of it, I mean, these come also 6 feet, but these are just a couple little scraps that we use as spacers. But you'll notice the glass on this is called an adjustable U-zinc. So the glass doesn't go all the way to the back of the cane here, right? So it kind of rests in that channel. So when we're assembling our pieces, we have to compensate for that space, right? And we also have to compensate for the space that is inside the channel that's going to overlap the glass. If you're a copper foil person out there, right? So you have probably every tool you practically need for doing work, but you might need a lead kit. And so this is actually everything you need to do lead work. So all the tools, right? A pair of shears or scissors, whatever you want to call them, for cutting out your pattern, right? So this one compensates for the heart of the lead. So when it's a 3-bladed pair of scissors. right? These are lead nippers or lead cutters, whatever you will call those, right? Those are pretty nice depending on what you're doing. A lead knife. So, and I can tell you, sometimes people will use one type of cutter and the next time they're like, oh, for what they're trying to do, especially when you're trying to get another piece of lead to like meet up against another one, using the nippers is sometimes a whole lot easier, right? Where you're just trying to do that. A hammer, right? Because you got to hammer those nails in. Putty, right? So if you're not familiar, so we have to cement this when it's done, right? So you put in something that weatherproofs it. It also stops glass from kind of rattling around. That's there. We use a brush to apply the cement, and we also use a brush to clean it up later with this stuff, whiting. So whiting is basically it's ground up chalk. And so after you put all this putty on there, you sprinkle the whiting on there, and that will clean up. That'll stick to that, all that cement, and just help you clean it up. It actually is a great way of cleaning it up. Oh, a fid, right? Everybody needs a fid. Horseshoe nails. Okay, if you're not familiar with horseshoe nails, what's unique about them is they're not round like regular nails. They're flat. And so you need that when you're going up against, another piece of lead or a piece of glass, right? A flat surface is much better, and you're less likely to chip your glass than a round surface, right? And then this is just a little brass brush, which sometimes comes in handy. So you can kind of, if you're having a problem soldering something to something else because of a little bit of oxidation, this will remove that off the surface, and then you can solder it. Yeah, so these would go in. So if you can see the setup here, you would just use this. So it would be between the horseshoe nail and the piece of glass, again, just so you don't chip the glass with the metal horseshoe. All right. Well, we're probably going to be back in a few weeks, right? Not 100% sure what we're talking about, but yeah, we mean this seriously when we say, if you have ideas, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do it. In fact, I heard from someone one that we did, and that person came in the store, and she's like, you did my question. I was like, yeah. She acted surprised. I was like, yeah. We don't know what people necessarily need or looking for. We're just trying to find ways to hopefully make it easier for you when you're working, right? Or explain what products are, and we're happy to do any of those types of things. But we'll be back. I'm not sure if it'll be Daisy or Val, but maybe I'll drag Daisy along again. So.
Depends on what it is.
Well, thanks for joining us. See ya.